When we think of the Panama Canal, what comes to mind? It's usually a massive ship gliding silently through the jungle. A monumental shortcut carved from the earth. We see the concrete, the steel, the sheer scale of it all, and we call it a wonder of the modern world. And it is. But the story of the canal isn't just about moving earth and pouring concrete. It's a story about people. And most of them we've never heard of. The real genius behind this waterway wasn't just one person, but thousands of unseen engineers whose names aren't on any monuments. To understand their achievement, we first have to look at the failure. In the 1880s, the French tried to build a canal here. They were led by Ferdinand de Lesseps, the hero who built the Suez Canal. They had brilliant engineers, powerful machinery, and a bold plan. But the jungle had its own plan. The real enemy wasn't the Culebra Cut or the Chagres River. It was the mosquito. Malaria and yellow fever were unstoppable. They didn't just lose workers, they lost doctors, architects, and administrators. The French effort collapsed under the weight of a tiny insect. They learned the hard way that you can't engineer a canal if you can't first engineer a healthy environment. When the Americans took over in 1904, they knew they couldn't make the same mistake. This is where we meet our first unseen engineer. His name was Dr. William C. Gorgas. He wasn't a civil engineer, he was an army physician. His battlefield wasn't rock and mud, but swamps and puddles. He understood that to defeat yellow fever and malaria, he had to destroy the places where mosquitoes bred. It was a massive undertaking, an engineering project in itself. Gorgas and his team of sanitation officers went to war. They drained swamps, fumigated homes, installed screens on windows, and built citywide water systems to get rid of the rain barrels where mosquitoes laid their eggs. They covered every puddle of standing water with oil. It was tedious, unglamorous work. Many thought it was a waste of money, but Gorgas insisted. Within 2 years, he had practically wiped out yellow fever in the canal zone. He didn't move a single stone for the canal, but without him, it would never have been built. He engineered life, so others could engineer a waterway. With the health crisis managed, the next challenge was the work itself. The first American chief engineer quit after just a year, overwhelmed. The project was in chaos. Then came a man named John Stevens. Now, Stevens is a known name, but his real genius is often misunderstood. He was a railroad man, tough and practical. And when he arrived, he famously stopped all excavation. He said, "The digging is the least thing of all." What he meant was, you can't move mountains if you can't first move your people and your dirt efficiently. He saw the problem not as a digging project, but as a logistics project. Stevens' unseen engineering was in creating a system. He rebuilt the entire Panama Railway. He devised a brilliant method of using swinging booms to move tracks so the dirt hauling trains could get right up to the steam shovels. He treated the flow of excavated earth like a massive assembly line. But he did something else, something even more important. He knew you couldn't just take care of the machines, you had to take care of the men. He built towns with clean housing, schools, churches, and social halls. He knew that people worked better when their families were safe and their lives had dignity. He wasn't just building a canal, he was building a community. And then there are the locks. The heart of the canal. These massive concrete chambers lift ships up and over the mountains of Panama. The man in charge at this point was George Washington Goethals, and he gets most of the credit. But the intricate design of the locks themselves? That came from a team of brilliant and largely forgotten draftsmen and engineers. A man named Edward Schildhauer was the lead designer for the lock machinery. He and his team spent years in a drawing room, figuring out every gear, every motor, every valve. They came up with a design for the lock gates that was pure genius. The gates are so huge, but they are hollow and watertight, like the hull of a ship. This makes them buoyant, so it takes very little energy to swing them open and closed. A motor the size of a small car could move a structure that weighed hundreds of tons. But perhaps the most unseen engineers of all were the workers themselves. Over 40,000 of them. Most were West Indian men, from Barbados and Jamaica. History often remembers them as just muscle, the brute force that dug the ditch. But that does them a great disservice. They were the ones on the front lines, facing the challenges of the Earth every single day. They were the ones who knew, from experience, the precise amount of dynamite to use to fracture the rock without causing a deadly landslide. They were the steam shovel operators, the train conductors, the men who laid the tracks. They developed their own techniques, their own solutions to problems the head engineers in their offices couldn't even imagine. Their ingenuity isn't recorded in blueprints, but it's embedded in the very walls of the canal. They were the hands-on engineers, and they paid the highest price in lives lost. When you look at the control panels for the locks, even the original ones from 1914, you see another kind of unseen genius. The electrical systems were designed to be incredibly safe and simple to operate. They created a miniature model of the locks on the control board. If a valve was open on the real lock, a corresponding indicator would be open on the board. They built in mechanical interlocks, making it physically impossible to open one valve if another, conflicting one was also open. This wasn't just about making things work, it was about protecting the operators and the ships. It was human-centered engineering over 100 years ago. So the next time you see this marvel of the world, look closer. Look beyond the giant ship and the rushing water. Think of the doctor who fought the mosquitoes, the railroad man who built a community, the draftsman who made a steel gate float. And think of the tens of thousands of men who, with their hands and their minds, solved 1,000 small problems every day to achieve one great thing. The Panama Canal isn't just a monument to engineering. It's a monument to human ingenuity in all its forms, seen and unseen.